Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger, and I'm the founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, and we're probably the world's only organization dedicated to teaching management across all types of organizations how to maximize results through a strategic and systematic approach to engaging with all your stakeholders. And as part of our mission, we focus on how to implement stakeholder management. A lot more people are talking about the importance of addressing the needs of our stakeholders in order to enhance the returns for our investors. But we're really focused, and we have been for the last 16 years, on how to do it. And part of the toolkit for engaging people in the enterprises are obviously live events and meetings. And so we've launched a part of our education program specifically focused on how to enhance the return on investment and impact of your meetings. And we're doing this with a series of interviews and shows with Jackie Basco. She's our co-host today and CEO and founder of Basco Talent. And then we invite different guests from different worlds. In this case, Connor Fields from literally from Olympic glory with a brush with death along the way. And to get their perspectives, he's a corporate speaker. He's out in the world. So he's sharing his wisdom with all audiences all over the world. And so we're going to kind of tap into his wisdom today and how he shares that at events. And then we always like to say thank you to our sponsors, or I should say the companies that we do business with. There are all sorts of different solution providers. And in our case, we give away a ton of information. Yes, we have books, we have a learning platform, but we have these YouTube shows, lots of articles, media. So, and just feel free to give me a call. We're happy to help anybody on the road to enhancing their organization through people. So I'm now going to stop this share with a little bit of help here. So Connor, thanks so much for joining us, and Jackie. And since we really do stick to our 30 minutes, Connor, I want to get right into it. If you could, how would you describe today your purpose, goals, and objectives as one who's been to the Olympics, and we'll get into a little bit more in that, and had one of the most glorious experiences that most people will never have. And how would you say that difference from when you set out, when you first discovered BMX and as a young man?
Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. Going through the process of being a kid who has a dream, who wants to go to the Olympics one day, who goes to his first Olympics but doesn't medal, and then all I wanted to do was get the medal, and going through that whole process. And obviously, that is as high stakes as it gets. There is no bigger stage than the Olympics when it comes to sport. So after that, when my career ended, and my career didn't end necessarily the way that I would have drawn it up, it was a near-death experience accident, and all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, my career was over. And so there was definitely a period of what the heck am I going to do now, which is normal for all athletes to go through. I think it's a very common experience that elite athletes have.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Because you said something interesting. You went to the Olympics as a young man, you're saying, and that was the spark that made you. I think your mom had introduced you to BMX. So are you telling me that it was one event that sparked that whole road, no pun intended, and then it was another one event that changed your whole life, this near-death experience? Am I reading into that, or are these kind of critical moments?
No, I mean you're correct. It wasn't the first Olympics that I attended in 2012 when I was 19. That wasn't the spark. The spark obviously happened well before that. You don't get to the Olympics without a boatload of hard work. The spark really came when I was 15 and I watched the Olympics on TV. I had already been competing for 6 or 7 years at this time, just in the amateur divisions as a kid, but I watched the Olympics on TV and I just thought it was the coolest thing that I had ever seen. And that's really what fired me up to dedicate full time and start training, 6 days a week for 4 years straight to try to make it to the Olympics when I was a kid, when I was 19. But then, yeah, my third Olympic Games when I was 27 at that time was when I had the accident. And really, I honestly had planned on going to another Olympics after that. So my career ended, 4 years earlier than I wanted it to, and in a way that wasn't what I what I had, envisioned or dreamed of. But it did set me down this entire different pathway where, for my whole BMX racing career, I was in an individual sport, focused on myself, just trying to win the next race. It was all about me. Now my new passion is helping others, whether it's through corporate speaking, or I'm very active as a coach in the BMX world for everything from 5-year-old beginners all the way to Olympic hopefuls, or the TV show that I host, where we really do a lot for sustainability and promote the outdoors in Nevada. My life now revolves around helping others, which is about as 180 degrees as you could get from when I was competing, when it was all about me as an individual in an individual sport.
And would you say maybe that near-death experience did that have something to do with that, or did that really more come from the change of life? You had to find a new path, and it couldn't be about me anymore. Or how did that near-death experience play into that?
I definitely think it was a part of it. When you go through something like that, anytime I've had conversations with other people who have had similar experiences, it does change your perspective. You look at things a little bit different, and I think it also really taught me the true fragility of life and how you really just don't know what's coming around the corner. And there's just something that feels so good about helping others that you don't get from helping yourself. Right? There's a different kind of victory in helping somebody else succeed and achieve their goals than just doing it for yourself. So I think that that's part of it. But I also think that, I was so far on one side of the spectrum for so many years, being, for lack of a better word, selfish in my approach and how I was trying to be the best in the world, that now I've swung pretty far onto the other side of the spectrum to even things out with helping others as my primary goal. And I think it just kind of balances out. Most people live somewhere more in the middle. I've lived on both ends of the extreme.
So, Jackie, where did you meet Connor in his journey and in his transition? And what made you think that we should have him on this program?
If I remember correctly, I met Connor through my friend Jennifer Lear, and she told me she had a great speaker, and I met Connor, and I got to hire him. And I got to know him also as a person, a beautiful person, and he's all about hopes and dreams for himself and other people. And after I hired him, one thing he did touch me forever. You know how that you see one thing that you never forget? He talked about his wall, and as a kid, he wrote on his wall his hopes and dreams of going to the Olympics. And his dad cut out that piece of drywall, and he brings that piece of drywall with him. And after he's done, everybody has a piece of a wall under their seat. And he talks about what's on your wall, what are your dreams? And I love that. And I think that could be used even as a team building event, either before or after his speech, because everybody has a dream, everybody's got a wall, and we all need to write on it.
Well, so I love that. So, Connor, what is the lesson of fulfilling that? You had to go through brutal. I can only imagine what it was like to make it to the Olympics, and the danger that you obviously faced every day. So, what was it like when you really got that dream? Was it a letdown in any way? Was there a moment where where you had an existential moment? What was it like when you were under the lights and you got your gold and you were up there?
Yeah, yeah. Before I answer that, I'll go back to the wall quickly. Just for a little background, you had asked me about when I had my moment that I knew I wanted to do this, and I said it was when I watched the Olympics, and it was like 3 in the morning because of the time change. I watched the Olympics on TV. I grabbed a Sharpie and I wrote on the wall at my parents' house that one day I was gonna win the Olympic gold medal, and I got grounded for it because you're not supposed to write on your wall in a Sharpie. But my parents let me keep that on the wall because in their mind, they're like, all right, he's dedicated to this goal. And at this time, they thought it was a pipe dream. They didn't think I'd actually be able to do it. But they're like, he's not out drinking and doing drugs. He's just working
Yeah,
out every day. So we're going to support this because this is, a good path
awesome.
to go down. And when I ended up winning the Olympics, it was 8 years after I wrote that down. I took this beautiful photo. I got to go to my house, my childhood home, and stand there with my Olympic gold medal next to the goal that I had written on the wall 8 years earlier. And then a few years later, my parents moved out of that house. So when they moved out of that house, they gifted me, they cut out the drywall. It was about this big. They cut it out and they gifted it to me. And I actually have it on display in my trophy area, I guess. It's right next to the gold medal. I have three things. It's my first trophy I ever won in 1999, that piece of wall, and the Olympic gold medal. And to what Jackie was saying, when I go to events, I share that story. And, I make a bit of a joke about it. I'm like, now, from a legal liability point of view, I am not telling you to go home and write on your wall with a Sharpie. I don't need your people coming after me for telling you to do that. But writing down your goal and putting it somewhere you have to look at it every day, it helps you stay accountable. Now, everybody's got goals, whether you're in a financial industry and there's a certain number you're trying to hit, whether you're trying to lose weight and there's a certain number you're trying to hit. Everybody's got a goal, right? But if you have to look at it every day, it helps you with that accountability. And it really gives you no choice. So, whether it's putting it on your desk, putting it on your fridge, just put it somewhere you have to look at it. And then at the end, to Jackie's point, if the meeting planner that I'm working with, wants to do this, I actually have them right here. I have some, I guess you'd call them walls, and they're kind of real hard cardstock, and they're taped under the chair. You grab them out, and then it's kind of like a takeaway from the event. You write down your goal. But then to answer your question about what happens when you win the gold, the way that I describe it is it's every emotion you've ever felt turned up to level 10. You're excited, you're happy, you're thrilled, you're in shock, but you're also relieved because all that work didn't go to waste. You are kind of the whole case of it. Now what, right? Like you don't know what to do. And so for me, when I won, I was 23 years old, and I can tell you that there's no better place to come home to than Las Vegas, where I live, if you just won the Olympics and you're of age. So we had a good time for a little while. But then, I had to be like, all right, what's next? My dream just came true at 23. What am I going to do now? And, at that time I was still pretty young. So I was like, all right, I'll go for another one, I guess, and that's kind of the natural progression. And then there's this weird balance of, you have to be proud of what you've accomplished, but you really can't rest on your laurels for too long because, you got to go keep going to try to defend this and get another one. And I didn't get to enjoy it for maybe as long as I wish I could have because I just kept working. And then at the next Olympics, I was, close to defending it. I was all the way in the finals. I was one of the favorites again. And then I had like a very freak accident and then got hurt, traumatic brain injury, coma, the whole thing. So now, I was faced with an entirely new challenge of like, career's over, not the way you wanted it to end. Now what are you going to do? And, I also had a year of rehabilitation mixed in there where I had to go to neurological, basically brain rehab because my brain didn't work properly, all the way to, I had to relearn how to drive and pass my driver's test again during my recovery. And then when I graduated from brain recovery after 6 months, I had shoulder reconstruction because they didn't want to put me under for surgery until I was recovered from the head injury. So then I finished that entire year and it was like, all right, well, you can't do what you used to do anymore. What are you going to do now? And, that's a daunting thing to face, especially as 28 at the time. And, how do you figure out what you want to be when you grow up? Right? Like that's hard for everybody.
And when you've already succeeded.
Well, and I remember talking to my therapist about it. And it's like, I will probably never have the same rush or the same scale as winning the Olympics. Like quite literally, short of winning the Super Bowl, there's not really much else that even compares. So like I had to recalibrate what success meant, and I had to recalibrate my approach to everything. Otherwise, everything kind of seemed like it wasn't a big deal, right? And I think going through some of that is really what led me to getting a lot of purpose and joy from helping others and watching others reach their own gold medals. Like to me, that has been what's really kind of got me going again after going through what I went through.
So you've been able to blend your love, obviously, for BMX with helping people, and then even bringing some of the lessons of what you've been through to the corporate world.
Yep, exactly. And it's two very different situations, right? If I'm helping a teenage kid learn how to jump a 50-footer, right? That's a very different thing than when I'm in a room with 600, salespeople, and we're talking about peak performance strategies and what I used in my world to try to become the best and how that's applicable to them. What strategies can I equip them with that are going to help them? Um,
Well, that's interesting. So I like to pride myself. I'm in sales in a way. Anybody who owns a business or runs a business should be in sales. So how does what you went through, or pardon me, how does BMX and what your discipline relate to sales?
Well, there's a lot of different ways that it does. Ultimately, high performance. There's going to be similarities between all things, but one of the lessons that I really focus on and try to teach is a concept called periodization. All right, and so I'm going to have to break this down for you. Now, when you talk about the Olympics, I was the best in the world at one of those sports that the general public only cares about for one day every 4 years. Right? Like the general population only sees BMX racing on TV one time every 4 years. And you have to make that day count, right? I can win a gold medal and I can become a legend and I could do all that. Or if I make a mistake and I mess that day up, I have to wait another 4 years for my chance. So think about the pressure that goes into, it's not next year, it's not next season. It is, I've got to wait 4 years for another chance. And the training technique from a physiological perspective that Olympic athletes use is called periodization. And when you talk about periodization, what it is it is a 4-year plan to peak, which is the term for it, to peak at the right time.
Yeah.
Now, Usain Bolt, Michael Phelps, myself, like Olympic athletes, we're not setting world records every other week. And then you get to the Olympics and you set a new world record and you're like, oh yeah, this happens all the time. Throughout the majority of that 4 years, you are nowhere near your peak form because you have this plan that you have reverse engineered to be at your absolute best for one day. And so you take elements of what you need to do. So for me, I had to be strong. I had to be fit and have endurance. I had to have technique. There's the different elements of what I needed. And then I would spend 6 months working on that one thing exclusively. I would just do 6 months where this period is a strength block and I'm just in the gym. Then the next 6 months is just a technique block. I'm only working on my technique. Then when it comes time for the Olympics, time to peak, you've spent dedicated time on every single piece of your game. Your puzzle is ready to be put together, right? So the way that can be applicable to anyone or a sales team or people listening, figure out what the most important time of the year is for you. Is there a certain week? Is there a certain month? What's the most important period of time? Then you go through, and this is actually also a workshop that I can lead. You figure out what are the elements. What do you need to be good at to be successful at that period of time? You break those down, and then you break them down one step further of what goes into being good at those elements. And then you can use a calendar, and I have a similar one that athletes use, and you can plug in your plan kind of working backwards to be at your best. And I think when people hear the concept, they have the same face that you have, which is that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Usain Bolt's not running under 10 seconds the whole time, all 4 years. It's all designed to trend in this direction and be ready to go when it's time to go. That is how you reach true peak performance. And peak performance is not necessarily something you can have every day for 365 days a year. And you've got to be strategic about how you get it.
And then there's an emotional element to both what your career and sales in that I'm sure in those training things you had setbacks.
Oh,
You
yeah.
kept doing it, and you kept falling, you fell or what and at the end of the day you might and then the next day when you thought you had it, the day after you fell again.
Mm-hmm.
That's sales, right? So there's a mindset that goes along with that. And by the way, that mindset is had to be very important to keep you going for 4 years. Tell me a little bit about that.
Totally. I mean, you could do, and what's hard with my sport, as well as it really ties in with sales, you could do everything right and still not be successful because it's not 100% on you, right? I could do everything that I could possibly do and get a flat tire. I could do everything that I could do, and somebody just showed up and was better than me that day. And I did my best, but someone beat me. When you're in sales, you can do everything right, but if the buyer's not feeling it, then that's not on you. That's not reflective of you. And so the challenge was, how do I line up in the starting gate at every race thinking that I can win when I haven't won in 6 months, or I've failed at the last few events, I've been nowhere close. I've got to be able to, get back in and go again. And for me, what it was all about was two things. Number one, you had to be realistic with self-assessment, and you had to empower yourself and have a trusted kind of team around you that you took input from. And hey, did I actually do my best? Was I as dedicated as I could have been? Was there something technically that I could have done better? How do I avoid this next time? And be realistic with your self-assessment and allow the input from other people around you to continue to get better and to move forward to the next race. And then the other thing is, sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it. And there's no shame in that. You got to get in the gate and say, I'm going to freaking win this race, when maybe you have no realistic reason why you should win this race. You just got to get in and go. And the way that I always approach that is, I'm here, I'm lined up, I am going to compete. If I'm here doing that, I might as well give it my best. And if you're going into a situation in business where you don't know if you're going to make it happen, you don't know if it's going to work, well, you're already here, you're already doing it. You might as well treat it like you're going to make it happen and make it, and see if you can make it work. Because if you
And
get
then
in the
what do
game,
you do? What do you do with the inevitable failure? What do you do with the inevitable, uh, um, you look like, for instance, you probably have a number of races, not just one race during the Olympics, right? They're the trials, and again, I'm not familiar with the sport, but I'm sure there's not just one race,
yeah,
right?
there's a whole lot.
Right? So you have to, and maybe you got a bad phone call from somebody and who gave you bad news. How do you is there some way to compartmentalize the disappointments and the or the things that could take you off your game? Is there something you learn about compartmentalizing?
Yeah. So one thing that I learned through working with my sports psychologist a lot was the pink elephant theory. So if I told you right now, Bruce, do not think about a pink elephant, what did you just think about?
Big elephant.
So if all you're trying to do is not think about failure, what happens if this goes wrong, what happens if this doesn't work, then that's what you're going to think about, right? So what I've learned is you have to let it pass through, but don't hold it. So what happens if I don't make this sale? What happens if I don't win this race? Well, okay, I didn't score as many points, I didn't make as much prize money, but the sun's going to come up tomorrow. My family loves me. Life goes on. And you kind of remind yourself that it's going to be okay. And then you let that thought move forward and it's gone, right? Whereas if all I'm doing is sitting here trying not to think about it, I'm going to accidentally, subconsciously think about it. So you almost have to accept the bad case and be like, okay, that could happen. That's a possibility. And then let it go and then move on from it, rather than try to just completely avoid it and say, I'm only going to think about what could happen if it goes right. Because
So
of
don't
course,
repress it, but on the other hand, make sure it's alive in you. But on the other hand, recognize it's just one of the possibilities, and to focus on what you can control.
yep. And that's where, at the Olympics, like my first Olympics, I got seventh. And so going into my second Olympics where I won, I knew that even if I didn't win, the sun was still coming out tomorrow. My family still loved me. Like, life was going to go on if I didn't win. Now, I really wanted to win with every cell in my body, but I wasn't going into it thinking that the sun wasn't coming up tomorrow if this doesn't happen. I had already kind of lived that it was going to be okay.
So we're coming toward the end, and this is where we get into a little bit more specifically about your approach to, corporate engagements. First off, what are the lessons that you really are your life lessons that you're most eager to share that you think are the most valuable thing? If I'm sitting next to you on an airplane, I often use that analogy. What can you share with Connor, with our group from from your life experience that can benefit our organization?
Without having a pre-call to find out your specific goals, which, obviously I always like to tailor what I talk about to the goals of the event.
Mhm.
But the things that's most important to me are truly just dreaming big, setting goals, set ridiculous goals for yourself and go after them. And don't be afraid to do that. And don't let failure stop you from trying again. And in my story, I share details of times that I failed over and over and over again and wanted to give up and wanted to quit. And that is just normal. And then the other piece of that, it goes hand in hand with that, is that it doesn't matter who you are. Nobody is too strong or too good to ask for a little help sometimes. It doesn't mean that you got to go see a therapist or a psychologist, but just asking a friend, hey man, I need a little help right now. I need a little support right now. Nobody has to be a one person army. And I think that that's a common misconception this day and age. Everybody thinks that you got to just always be tough and always be strong because that's all we see on social media is everybody's success and everybody killing it because nobody's going to post the times that they're sitting at their desk stressed out because things aren't working. So those two things really just don't be afraid to reach for the stars and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way. Because, and I share this, every single athlete that is on the Olympic team is required to work with the sports psychologist. Every one of them. It's a requirement. So when you watch the Olympics on TV and you watch all those amazing athletes in all the different sports, just know that they're getting a little bit of support in the back end too.
Well, I would think there's almost a little bit of post-traumatic stress syndrome with being in the games because here it is, you've got your adrenaline, you're going, the lights are there, there's an amazing rush of camaraderie. You're meeting people all over the world, and then all of a sudden you come home and
It's over.
it's over. What's
And
that like?
it's one way or the other. You either had the best experience of your life or the worst experience of your life, right? And even if you had the best, and I went through this too, you have this rush, but eventually it's coming back down, and life goes on, And so it's a lot to deal with, especially most of the time we're kids. I was 19. I was a year graduated from high school. I couldn't even go get a beer. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to process that. What? You know?
So my last question to you is getting back to, and Jackie, add anything if I missed anything here. How can we use you a little bit more creatively in an event? I'm sure you've got stories to tell. I'm sure you can be, very engaging. But if we're going to hire you for a half day, how would you have any ideas about an ideal way to help people visualize their dreams or take in what you want to share?
Yeah, and like I said, first off, I'm always open to work with whoever is planning the meeting to figure out, what's going to work best for them. But with that being said, I have that breakout session where we create a periodized plan for your own peak performance, and that's going to be very unique to the individual and to the organization based on the goals of that and also the challenges and what they're facing. But and then they have like basically their version of a training program that they can then put on their wall or put on their desk and then follow it. And if they follow it, they've written it with help, but if they follow it, they should achieve their goals. And from there, then they can repeat that process and it can just be integrated into how they approach their job. I think that's something that everybody can take and apply to their own life.
So, in other words, it's sort of an exercise that I can apply to my particular role in that organization. Or I would imagine this applies to our own personal lives, right? I
Totally.
mean, because we all have to have a purpose. And it sounds to me that your purpose has gone from, as you said, and it's really a beautiful story, focusing on yourself, which you had to do, to focusing on others. So, did your personality change when you when you went from being that rugged superstar bike guy, BMX guy, were you as affable and charming as you are now, or you maybe have you been humbled a little bit?
Well, I think I was definitely humbled when I had to retire with the injury and everything there. One moment I'm Olympic gold medalist, sponsored, king of the world basically, and then the next moment I'm in a hospital bed, and so that really shows you uh, that you're not invincible. But with that being said, I think that this personality has always been in there. I just had to kind of turn it down and turn other pieces up to reach the levels of success that I reached. It is not normal to wake up every day and to say, I want to be the best in the world. That is not a sane thought that people have. Like there's an element of that is a little bit crazy. And to do that for 15 years, is a little bit crazy, is what I did. So
Hold
now
on. Whoa,
it's,
whoa, whoa. Jackie and I learned so many new things. Wait a minute. I never thought about that. You're basically saying that in your profession, every day you had to focus on being the best in your profession. Who has that pressure? Think
I
about that.
mean, yeah, it's very unique, and it's something that only other elite athletes. And when I say elite, I mean elite of the elite, right?
Yeah.
There are thousands of Olympic athletes. There's only a couple hundred Olympic gold medalists, right? There are a lot of NFL players. There's only a handful of Pro Bowlers. But when you're talking about the 1% of the 1%, you're talking about the ones that have a few screws loose because for 15 years, I woke up every day saying, I'm going to be better than anybody else in the world at what I do. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there. If that means no dessert for 4 years, I'll do it. If that means that I got to get up at 4 in the morning and work out every day, I'll do it. And then actually like sticking to that for that long, there's a little element of I like to say it's a little crazy to think that, because that's just
No,
not.
it's amazing. So what does the sports psychologist say to that? Because you're right. That is I would consider myself on a quest, but I never have ever thought of myself as being the best. And yet you have to be the best or you will fail at your quest.
Yeah, it's trying to balance staying somewhat healthy and sane as you go through that, because it's a constant. In my sport, as an individual sport, it was a constant comparison. I'm sitting there and I'm like, am I working out harder than this rider? Am I training harder than this rider? Is this guy eating dessert? Is this guy having a glass of wine tonight? So like, it was this constant state of anxiety because I had to kind of compare myself to the athletes that I was going to be competing against every minute of every day, all the time. And so like that weighs on you, and like trying to have fun and like have a life outside of that and not let that consume you is the challenge. And that's really what I worked on with the sports psychologist, is having outside interests or things that would give me like a reprieve from that, or let me feel good about myself about something else. That's how I got into speaking, because I can't train for 14 hours a day. I could sit here and I could practice my speech, and that's not going to hurt my competitive athlete stuff. So that's how I got into that. But yeah, it's just trying to find that balance when you're not balanced at all is really what
Well,
it
in
was.
a sense, it would probably be helpful to have a little bit of OCD actually, and compulsiveness. I'm kidding a bit, but I mean, because you just have you can't you have to do it for 4 years, or
I mean,
you're not
there's
going to win.
there's a lot of Christmases that I spent working out. I would wake up in the morning, I would work out before going to eat Christmas dinner, or a lot of Thanksgivings that I was going to the gym before going to dinner. There's a lot of days like that, and people who haven't been around it don't understand the dedication, and they don't know what it truly takes to be the greatest at something in the world. Like when you think about that, I mean, it's
Yeah.
everybody in the world's trying to take your job, and you gotta hold out and be better.
That's amazing. Well, Jackie, Connor is proof of why I have always in the past liked to hire salespeople who are really in sports, because
Yeah.
they actually have oftentimes that determination and the resilience. So, and you're living proof of it. Connor, thanks so much for sharing. This has been a great learning experience. Jackie, thanks
I would
again
love
for
to say
inviting
one thing,
Connor.
Bruce. I would
Please.
love to say, Connor, you are a winner and you did win. And that's the biggest thing in the whole world. you achieve what was on your wall, and now you're mentoring people to achieve what's on their walls. And I can't wait to book you again.
Thanks, Jackie. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you both, and have a good rest of your days.
Hey,
Thanks
Bruce,
so
real quick before we head out, what's on your wall?
I'm going to stop and answer that question, okay? I will. Bear with me.